to It. My name's Jonny.
And my name's Chris.
Two totally average bass players, and we're here to talk all about that bass, as well as answering your questions at home. Each week we take a look at the latest news and maybe break down some tones, all to give you the lowdown on the low end. This week, we are so excited to bring an absolute legend at the low end to your ears and eyes. I've written a little poem to get us going. Here we go.
Oh, beautiful.
He's the founder and CEO of SBL, a monster on the bass. If you couldn't tell, he's teaching the nation fretboard acceleration, no confusion, king of fusion, glove wearing, content sharing, skills climb with lessons online. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott Devine.
Motherfucker, you're good.
Chat GPT coming through there.
I was like, as you were saying it, I was like, I wonder if this is AI. Like,
when are you going to do one of those for me?
Every single episode, Chris. I'll give you a new one.
Thank you.
That's where ChatGPT.
Did you use GPT?
Honestly, honest to God, I didn't touch it. Not
amazing,
at all.
Wow.
Incredible.
Not at all. I was
Creative bass player. Incredible.
Yeah, I know. Insane. That's where all my creativity goes instead of playing the bass, which is a bit of a shame. But I'm hoping at the end of this episode that Chris and I will graduate from totally average bass players to kind of average bass players.
And what a guest we've got on this week. You can kind of like knight us to be like, you are now sort of all right bass players.
Yeah. Scott, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. Welcome. How are you?
I'm brilliant. Just a shout to let anybody know if you're watching. Oh God.
Oh,
yeah, I've got an angry little. Yeah, we're under attack. I've got my angry little dog with me, and I'm also sat in front of a massive window. So if it looks like I'm melting during this, if you watch it on YouTube, I do apologise. Daisy, do you want to come and say hello?
Absolutely. Here's the real guest.
She's like, no. She's like, I'm not coming over. No.
There's an appearance fee.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, I'm sure most people watching this podcast know you, Scott, from, of course, Scott's Bass Lessons and the podcast as well, which, we're big fans of. And so we had Ian on. We had to get you on as well. But to get to know you a little bit more, we like to ask our guests 3 questions just at the start, just in case people at home are living under a rock and don't know who you are. So, simple questions, but quite difficult, I would say. Number 1, what would you say is your number 1 bass?
Oh my! It changes all the time. Like number 1, as in the house is on fire. What am I going to grab?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Interestingly, I'll give you 2. I'll give you 2 basses then. So if all my basses are in this house is on fire, I need to grab one. I will grab my early '80s Ken Smith.
Ooh. Okay. Understandable.
Weirdly, I don't actually. It's not my number 1 bass, but it's like there's something about it, and I don't think I'll be able to get another one like it. Whereas some of the other basses, I'm like, well, it's a P bass, it's a jazz bass, whatever. There's lots of them. I'm sure I'll find another one. But that one is a bit of an outlier because it was made in the early '80s, and Vinny Federa made it when he was working for Ken Smith when he was a young lad. So I would grab that. But in terms of my number 1 bass, it kind of changes, but I would say probably my Alinto P bass. Or the Bass of Doom custom shop that you've probably seen.
I thought you were just going to keep going. Or
that Squire Bronco I bought yesterday.
Yeah. But one of my 2 P basses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, very good. That's probably the quickest anyone's ever answered that question. Usually when we ask these questions, really? It's supposed to be just fire through a bit of an icebreaker, and then they speak. We talk for about 40 minutes on each bit. Anyway, question 2. Describe your bass playing in 3 words.
Oh.
That's 1.
Great.
Fuck off.
2 and 3. Gasp, fuck off. There we go. Thank you. Question 3.
Yeah.
No prep.
3 words to describe my bass playing. Expressive. pockety.
Okay.
You're in the right place.
Well,
Expressive,
you're in.
pockety. With a word that I'm like pretty good with, like harmony and stuff like that. So some word that describes that I'm a bit. I can use fancy harmony.
Ooh.
Overly floral, overly fancy.
Yeah.
Floral.
Yes,
Love
yes.
that.
That's
Love
it. Like
I
what was
like
that?
that.
Expressive, pockety, and floral. Yeah,
I think
exactly
floral. I think floral should be moved into like the official term for a bass player who likes to put inversions in songs, aka how to get sacked from a wedding band. But
yeah, can
also,
we add something floral there, please?
yeah, guys, can we
Yes.
put right? Okay, right. You want to put the 3 in the bass, right? Whatever.
Can you make it more floral?
Yeah, a bit more
we
floral,
always
guys.
we always talk about on the podcast like all these adjectives that just don't make any sense, but they do.
Yeah.
You know, like oh, it sounds a bit barky, and you're like, well, it sound, you know,
Yeah,
all these
like warm is not sound.
It's warm.
Yeah.
It's earthy. It's got like an earthy vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really rooted.
It's so funny that like we have talked about this before, but it's like you say that, and we all know what you mean, but we can't explain it.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone who's not a musician, you're like,
I'm trying to think of another one. Yeah.
Well, bright. It's like obviously bright is trebly, and we all know that, but like bright is not a sound.
It's like brown.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you know, it's like kind of brown, right? What kind of tone is it? His tone's kind of brown.
it's got that brown sound. You're like,
Yes, the brown
Well,
sound.
the brown sound is a thing, though. That's what I was like. What, the bass player sounds like Eddie Van Halen?
Yeah.
I mean, sick.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah. Oh my
okay
god! I think that we shared on Instagram or Shorts or whatever.
You're talking about
that guy.
Thingy.
Yeah. Doing Eruption.
Yeah, his whole Instagram's amazing. Have you seen? He's got one where it's like an advert for something, like he's been sent something, and he's done it like a 80s washing machine commercial.
It's incredible, isn't it?
This is amazing, and he's jacked as well.
Yeah. What band's he in?
I have absolutely no idea. I've never looked.
He's in a band, and their whole deal is that it's like 80s band, but now, and it's really well done. I can't remember his name, but incredible.
I love that. When someone finds a niche and just like, fucking.
Yeah.
He does all like popular guitar solos, but on bass and stuff like that. Like he even does the Billy Sheehan thing, you know, like you play the note, then you get your hand behind the string and pull it up.
Oh,
I love doing that. I do that at weddings.
Stretching out those new strings.
No, what I'll do is if the song's like in E major, like, and I'm feeling cocky, I'll hit the low E as we're ringing out, and then I'll fret the 11th fret, the 11th fret of the G string, come behind and pull it up a tone.
Oh, nice.
So it goes up and hits the G sharps, it's like the major third. And I tell you what, the first time, any time I've done a wedding gig with someone, the first time they've seen me do it, like the other guys in the band, they've gone, "Oh, that's well cool." And then we do another wedding, and they go, "Are you going to do the stupid thing where you bend the string?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am."
Well, this day is about me.
So you play the G flat, and then you put your hand on the G string and pull it up.
Yeah, because of that's to sort of help you bend up a tone. So you pull it upwards. Yeah. Oh, you having a go now?
Wait, on which string?
On the G string.
Hit the open E normally. You would hit the open E normally, that ring out. Then fret the 11th fret of the G string.
Are you going?
No, with your
down
normal
the
fretting hand. With your normal fretting hand.
Oh.
So Scott's doing it like that kind of thing.
Is it like that?
Yeah, but without like trying to not chalk out the open E above it.
So you're keeping that one
it's
still.
ringing. It's just
because you're trying to bend up to create that. Is it a 10th? Is it technically?
You're basically doing.
Third? Yeah, that kind of thing.
But you're using this hand to pull up as well, right?
Yeah, because it looks flashy.
Because it looks cool.
That's what it's all about.
Can you guys tell I've got really bored of weddings now? I'm now doing stuff like this.
He's got the guitar behind his head for Mr. Brightside.
I'm just being floral. All right, guys, stop being mean to me.
Well, our third quickfire question.
Anyway,
for you,
third
Scott,
question
is importantly, and I want to hear the story. Why, Scott? Did you pick up the bass?
Oh, why bass? Well, I was a guitar player originally. Yeah, I know. Don't tell anybody. I was a
Well,
guitar player originally, so I'm really sort of like well versed in all of the guitar nerdy stuff as well. Because from like 13 to around 17, that's all I did. Sort of like Vai, Satriani,
Oh, okay. Me too.
Nuno Betancourt,
Yeah.
like Van Halen. Obviously, was super into all of that.
All the florists.
All of the
florists.
all of the floral guitarists, and then when I did absolutely horrendously in school, kind of sort of like tumbled out of school, not knowing what the hell I was going to do, and living in the middle of nowhere as well. Kind of like lived in a super small town, and there was
Don't talk about Leeds like that.
Well, it certainly wasn't Leeds, and
Yorkshire.
It wasn't even in Yorkshire. It was like it was like a Carlisle, which is like just past Wigan, Carlisle.
Yeah, my sympathies. The middle of nowhere, genuinely.
Yeah, so like the nearest city, like it is a city, but it's only got a population, I think, of like 120,000 or something like that. But all that to say that there was no professional musicians there. So, and obviously I was like going to school, like everybody else was going to school. So I didn't know that there was a thing that you could do called a professional musician. I thought you either, like, I don't know, worked in a factory like my dad, or you were in a famous band, right? There was no middle ground for me at all. So, so kind of like fell out of school and randomly ended up getting an apprenticeship at Overwater Basses because they opened a workshop, which is a great bass company, small kind of like boutique bass company, based here in the UK. They opened a workshop just like less than a mile from my house. I saw the advert in the paper. Literally, I was like, I had no clue what I was going to do. Played guitar, but I had no aspirations of being a professional musician because I didn't really know that even existed. But I did love like woodwork at school. That's maybe the only thing. That and music was the only thing I did, well at in school. So went down to the workshop, tried out for the apprenticeship. Bullied Chris, who was running the company, to give me the gig. Like literally, I went there every single day because that was there was one of those forks in the road. The fork was I was going to work at the factory where my dad worked, or I was going to do something else. That was the only thing else that I could do. So I ended up working, getting the apprenticeship, and they were making like 90% of what they made was basses, 10% guitars, and then also. At that time, Chris was, well, he probably still is, but he was really into like Weather Report and Brand X with Phil Collins on drums and Percy Jones on bass. So I was just like, he was playing me all of this sort of like fusion-y style stuff. And it was somewhat kind of like in the wheelhouse of what I wasn't listening to, because if he'd just been playing me like jazz stuff, I would have been like, what is this whack? Like awful. But like going from Vai and Satriani, which is kind of like technical playing, to like Weather Report, Brand X, also Uzeb, which is a French-Canadian fusion band. There was like, it wasn't like too far apart, but there was no guitar in any of those bands for the most part. So I was like, this bass thing's pretty cool. And then I saw the bass players coming up from the West End, because we made basses for a lot of the West End players, which is the UK version of Broadway. They were really nice guys. I started kind of like messing around on bass. I'm still playing in bands, guitar at the time. And at some point, I was like talking to Chris, and it happened over a period. There was not sort of like one moment where I was like, now I am a bass player. Well, there actually was, but that came later.
You were born with it.
Yeah. But when I first started...
chooses the wizard.
Yeah. But there was a few conversations where I was like, maybe I should... I love what he did, where I was mentioning it to Chris. Chris became sort of like a real mentor for me. And I mentioned that, like bass is pretty cool, and I'd love to do what they do. And Chris would say, hey, why can't you? And then he would also follow up with, there are thousands upon thousands of guitar players. There are actually not that many great bass players. Maybe you should focus on that. Hey, take a bass home. So I took that bass home. It was a cheap status. They did like a budget line, 4-string, natural ash body, and I slapped the living shit out of that bass. So I slapped it to death for like I don't know, 2 months. That's all I could do. And
this is before you learned. You're just like,
yeah,
just punching it.
yeah. So I did punching the living hell out of it, and then nothing really happened. You know, I played it a bit, and then I kind of sort of like whatever. And then somebody came into the workshop. It was a professional bassist working at a local theatre, which were about like 20, 30 miles away. He was the bass player in the theatre in the pit. And he came into the shop and he was looking for a bassist to sub to Depp for him while he had like an operation that he was going to go do or have done to him, should I say. And he said to Chris, he was like, do you know any pro bass players in the area that might be able to Depp for me for like 4 weeks, I think it was. And Chris said, I think he literally said, well, the kid might be able to do it, pointing at me. And I was like 18 at the time.
Like some 80s gangster movie. Like,
yeah.
Let the kid do it.
Let the kid do it. And he was like, all right. So he turned up with this pad of music and I could not read bass clef at all. And he sat me down and I had my bass and he put Wham! In the track was
Yeah,
yeah.
Got the name of that.
It's a beast of a tune. Like
Yeah.
it's a
I've played
killer.
it. I've played it at a wedding. I've just forgot the name of it. Oh no.
This is the rest of the podcast.
What's the song?
Yeah.
God damn. Anyway, so
Let's
he
all
put it
sit
down
in
in front-
silence
I
until
just-
we know what it is. No one
messed
speak.
it up. Yeah, I just totally messed it up because I couldn't read. And he was like, like
Yeah, I've
weird
been there.
social tension. You know, I'm like, and he's like, listen, he's like, I'm going to leave because he was desperate. He needed to get this operation. It was something to do with your lungs or something. He was like, I'm going to leave this pad with you. I'll come back in a week's time and see how you get on. So I said to Chris, I was like, look, I need to have reduced hours this week. I think I might have even taken the week off, actually. God, this is like 30 years ago. So is it even longer? I don't know. It's a shit. No, it's about 30 years ago. So I was like, I need to take the week off. And I can remember I was like living at home at my parents' house, woke up every morning, had my breakfast, and then I just sat with the tapes and these like charts, and I wrote the notes on and learned as much as I could physically learn.
Yeah. I
And then
did
he
that.
came back. Yeah,
Yeah.
you done it. Yeah. And then he
Did that
came
the first.
back,
Yeah, go on, you finish.
came back, listened to me play, and he was like, oh, he can do it. And so I got that 4 week. I got the 4 week sub gig from him, and went and sat in, and just my mind was blown to go from, again, I'm working as an apprentice luthier. I don't really still fully understand that there's like, I think like, professional musicians. So I went from, there isn't anything such as a professional musician, just not knowing that existed until I was like 16, 17, like there are professional musicians. But just for context, I thought, professional musicians work in the West End. And then there are people in famous bands. That's it. Again, I didn't know there
Nothing
was
else.
And that's it. And it's that now as well.
Yeah, there's nothing
Nothing's
else.
changed.
So I went from that to getting this. I was like, oh, it's in a theatre? I'd never been in a theatre, ever. I'd never been in a theatre. So I went from not knowing to, and like, for context, there was no internet. You can't go online and write, what's it like being in a theatre band? It didn't exist. So I didn't have anything. So I turned up to this gig, and that first night was just mind blowing. I was like, oh shit, this is what I'm going to do. This is the career. It was like, that was the first moment. I was like, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
How did the gig go?
We don't talk about that.
Like terribly. I thought it went great, but in reality it went terribly. Well, first of all, I'm on stage, and for this show, we're on the back of the stage, and the curtains are down, and band starts, and I'm like, oh my god, this is incredible. I mean, I've got the music stand with the lights on. I'm like, this is insane.
I've got the little clippy lights.
Exactly, right? And there's like the dancers walk on stage, and they've got these like 8 to 10 feet feathers just sticking out.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, like they're holding these feathers and stuff.
Why don't I have one of those?
Scott's not looking at the bass anymore.
Yeah, like literally, I'm like looking at the bass. I'm like, what is going on? So, yeah, because there was no rehearsal
5
either.
beat counting. I'm not listening.
Yeah. No rehearsal. They walk on and then they swing round on stage. Whoosh, and as they swing round, these massive feathers create a huge gust of wind.
Oh, right.
And my entire pad on the music stand just gets blown across the stage. Across
Should
it
have bought
goes.
an iPad.
Should have taken a clothes peg. And but luckily, because I didn't read bass clef at the time, I'd been shedding for this thing, really prepping. So I'd kind of like memorized a lot of the tunes. So I could play them as like the dancers like kicked sort of like shit towards me. And I'm like picking it up and putting it on the stand and playing.
Reading it from here.
Yeah, so I got through the gig and then ultimately did that 4-week stint with them. And it was incredible, life-changing experience. Played with a proper band, was nowhere near good enough to be in that band. They were kind enough not to tell me, you know, and I just sort of like muddled through. And then Mike, the guy that gave me that 4-week stint, ultimately the operation he had to have another operation, couldn't do the gig basically. So I went back to being a luthier. He went back to playing that gig, and then he had to take he was like, I can't do this gig anymore. He needed to take time off for his health issues. So I got the gig. Yeah, so I ended up doing it for 12 months basically. And then after that, I thought so. I thought so. It couldn't be that bad. But there were definitely moments in that where Tim, who was a fantastic drummer, said, something along, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was basically, you know that you're only doing this gig because like we can't get anybody else right.
Don't say that.
But he said it in a really nice way, and he was nurturing as well. And then also at the end of that stint of the year, the whole show went on to track actually, so that all of the band were let go, and they all went on track. And so the band had to record this was the realization. They had to record the tracks that they were going to use.
It's going to replace that.
And they got Mike. They didn't use me. They got Mike to come back and record I was like, God damn. So that was the first, maybe not the first realization, but I was like, oh shit, maybe I've got a lot of work to do. Yeah. And then, so that was my first, sort of like, that's how I became a bass player.
Yeah, that's so strange because I had almost the exact same experience when I first went self-employed. I got a gig. I was playing guitar. That my first thing I was like hired in for was like to sort of like not necessarily like dep, but like long-term dep. It was like this guy had a hand operation, and it was like we need someone from like May to I don't know, October for this guy who was like this almost like this Motown. It was a holiday park gig. It was holiday park stuff, but it was like his set was all like I think it opened with like Dancing on the Ceiling by Lionel Richie. There was some Luther Vandross stuff in the guy like he did some Tina Turner as well and stuff like that he nailed. A really good singer, really good performer. Bit of a diva. I think the guy actually thought he was Lionel Richie, which is a bit weird. But anyway, playing guitar, and I get sent all the sheet music. And I learned to read sheet music at uni when I did my music degree, but I hadn't looked at it for like 4 years, so I'd properly lost the skill. Yeah, I didn't really have time to get it back, so I did what you did. I wrote I wrote every note down on it'd be like, but these were like little guitar runs, and I'd like write 7th position start E flat, and it'd be like run down scale, and I'd be like, ooh. Do that.
I did all of that.
And I wrote all those things down. And I did get to the first gig, and not to go around for ages and ages, but we got to the gig, and I'd loaded it all up onto my phone on a PDF viewer, so I could just move through them as needed. Yeah. Get to the first song. There's no service in this venue, like no phone signal, and I realised it was all cloud storage for all the charts, because I'd click them and it'd be like waiting for connection. And I'm the intro music started, click, waiting for connection.
Should have gone old school, dude.
I know, and I was like, now I've got an app that's all saved locally to you load the PDFs into it and you can fire through it. And it's an amazing app for that kind of thing. But luckily, because I couldn't read, because everyone else they were all just shit hot readers. Like the drummer was just reading the gig. Like he had like an iPad in between his rack tom and his kick drum, and he would just sit there. Yeah. And he had the little Bluetooth foot pad that changes the sheet, and he wouldn't look at anyone else. He would sit there and nail it note for note, like everything was perfect. But they were all reading musicians, like cruise musicians are, and I'm not that's not me in any way. So luckily, like you said, I'd shedded the living crap out of this because I was terrified because I can't read very well. So I knew the set. But I thought, oh my God, when I was waiting for that thing to connect, I was like, who knew the human heart could beat at 410 beats per minute?
You've got to just engage the trust chops, haven't you? You just got to have like trust chops engaged. I'm not going to think about it too much, and my body's just going to somehow weirdly remember this stuff. And a lot of the time it happens, you know. Yeah. A lot of the time it does happen.
I've had moments in gigs where it's normally if I'm like a big festival gig, I'll have this out of body experience where I'm like,
okay,
and my mind is just thinking about, oh, look at that crowd. Oh, this is great. I'm loving this. And then I'm like, oh, my fingers are doing things by themselves. Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's
this
cool,
is amazing.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I love that moment. It's so good. Yeah. I know that you have done work on cruises as well. Right,
yeah.
That's a big part of your career.
Yeah, like I went on the cruises off the back of that show, actually. So I did the show for a year, and then the same guy, Mike, who gave me that gig, called me. I can remember it vividly because I was living with a girl. I'd just talked this girl to move into Leeds with me. I was like, come on, let's move to Leeds. So we moved to Leeds. And then I was here maybe like a real short time, like too short, like a week or 2 weeks. She'd like given up a job, moved down here. And then Mike called me and he said, hey, you know, I heard the gig had finished and just was wondering if I've been offered a gig on a cruise ship and wondered, I can't do it because of my health issues, wondered if you wanted to go audition for it. I was like, what? A cruise ship? I had no, again, pre-internet. I didn't know anybody. I was like, what?
We don't
what
have
do you mean
boats
a cruise
in
ship?
Carlisle.
Yeah, exactly. And he was like, and he told me about it. And I can remember just thinking, no, this can't be real. Like, they don't pay musicians and sort of like send them around the world on luxury cruise ships and you can play every night. That sounds like a holiday, right?
And you will play every night.
Yeah, and you will.
I love that someone could have told you, like, they could have told you anything because you just didn't know.
It's a spaceship. Like, you're going to go do a gig on the moon.
Literally, cool. It was like that. I was like, what? People do that? He was like, yeah, people do that. So, and I had, and again, it was one of these situations where I'd been playing bass for that show for a year, but I really wasn't a bass player. I was still a guitar player. I'd been a guitar player for like 5-6 years previously, so I knew my way around the guitar well. But when it came to playing bass, I didn't really know what I was doing. I played the bass parts for that show. So I didn't really understand how to play bass. So it was a similar situation in that I had to go to this audition and I had no idea how to do the job that they wanted me to do. But they had to take me because it was leaving in 2 weeks. And it was going for 6 months. So you try and find somebody that can leave their life with 2 weeks' notice. You're gone. Everything. You're not going to see your family, your friends. So that basically rules out anybody with a family, with kids or anything like that. I mean, so the amount of people that can do that are basically zero. And there was me left. I can do it. So I went to audition for it. It went terribly. He basically, he threw me out of the room. There's a whole story about that. He threw me out of the room. So I had to pack up all of my gear in front of the rest of the band. The rest of the band were there for the audition, and I can remember them all just staring at the ground.
Oh, bam!
Because they were freaking
we'll go on. You got to tell us. Like, why did you get thrown out of the room?
Well, I went in to the audition, and this MD. I'm not even sure if this MD is still alive anymore because he was a West End MD, notoriously hardcore. So what was that? What was that film about
Whiplash?
Yeah, Whiplash. So think about that.
Yeah.
but like worse, actually, worse. So this MD, one of the stories I heard is that after the first set of one of his shows, he got the bass player's bass, opened the back door to the theatre venue and threw the bass into the street because he was raging with this bass play. Threw the bass into the road. Ooh. And then obviously the bass player didn't finish the gig and he played left-hand bass for the rest of it. So like notoriously bad-tempered, like raging guy.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this. I walked in all sort of like green. Hey, so we're going on a cruise.
Isn't it silly that people do this?
My ties for breakfast. Yay!
Yeah, exactly. So I sat down on this thing and he said, so we'll kick off with some jazz standards like,
no.
So, well, first of all, I didn't know what a jazz standard was. I was like, but I didn't say anything. I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, something like, he said like, how high the moon?
Pardon?
So I don't know what a jazz standard is. And I've never heard how high the moon before. And he was like, key of G. And then he just counts it off.
Oh,
and I'm
been there.
So no chart. He just expects me to know it or be able to lug it. And then so he starts playing and he's like looking at me like, what? And here's the worst thing. I could hear it was swing. So I just started playing random chromatic notes around the bass. Boom, 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 boom. And started sweating bullets. And he was like, what are you, he stopped the band. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't really know. And he was like, well, what do you know? And I was like, and then what's the one from Blue Moon?
They just started punching the bass, just like
yeah. It was blue. And then he went like Blue Moon, which was that Blue Moon. It's in American Whale from London, isn't it? Anyway, and he puts the chart. He was like, here's a chart. If you don't know any standards, put the chart in front of me. I'm like looking at the chart. It's a chord chart.
Yeah.
It's a chord chart. I've never read a chord chart in my life. So I'm like,
flat three, this.
Yeah, so he starts playing again, and I'm like, just again, I start moving chromatically. He like stops it. He's like just getting redder and redder. He's like, how about a bossa nova? I'm like, what's a bossa nova?
Strike three.
Strike three. It's so I don't even get to where I'm playing actually any sort of like actual pop tunes or anything like that. He's like, he's swearing, he's red, he's angry. The rest of the band are like terrified of him and they're all staring at the floor. Like legit.
Yeah.
Like staring at the floor. Let's just pretend it's like ostrich, like head in the sound vibes. And he was like, get out. So I have to pack my gear up in front of everybody. And one, I can't remember who it was, but they were like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm like, put the stuff in the car. I drive back to Leeds. It was around like Nantwich area. So like down towards Shrewsbury.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I like drive back. I open the house
Not a short
door.
Drive, by the way. Like that.
Not a short drive.
That's at least an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah,
I know what that is. Johnny doesn't, but I do.
Open
it's
the
near
door.
me. It's north of Birmingham, Johnny. North of Birmingham.
Yeah, don't exist.
I open the door of the house. I'm like, just so miserable. I'm sort of like, it was actually a traumatic experience to go through legit. And open the door of the house. And as I open the door of the house, the phone's ringing. And I lift up, it's like a house phone. Yeah. I lift up the house phone. I'm like, hello. And it's the guy, it's the MD. And he just says, listen, you're going on this cruise. And you're going on this cruise because if I don't send you, then this cruise, the band is going to be cancelled. And all of these guys that have booked 6 months out of their calendar are going to be left gigless for this time. He said, so you're going on this cruise. But be under no illusion that you are not going to stay on the cruise and you will be sent off within the first few weeks as soon as we find a bass player to replace you. And I was like, okay. I've got a goosebumps thinking about it, like down my forearm. I
would have been like, nah.
So I went on.
Heavy
and
as
I
the crown.
And just to be transparent, I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't tell anybody any of my friends about that experience till years afterwards. I think maybe Ian Allison's maybe the first person. The first time I maybe talked about any of this shit was on that podcast, I think.
Well, Ian is clearly a registered therapist. He's got to be.
Oh, he's a great therapist.
Thank you for sharing this trauma.
I was like ashamed. I'm not ashamed of it anymore, but as I was like going through it, I was like ashamed of it. And
sorry.
It's cool.
No, I'm laughing because I just pictured when Jonny went, "Thank you for sharing this," almost like as Ian. I just pictured I'd like this as Ian. If you watch this is from a place of love. I pictured Ian going, Scott, thank you so much for sharing this. This is my new noble DI, and I'm just gonna like just straight into something about octave pedals or something.
He's freaking awesome.
That is heavy though.
It was freaking heavy. But so I didn't share it with anybody, and I went and I can remember going on the cruise ship and thinking, because I think I did think that I was going to get sent back. But when I got on the cruise ship, I was like a tenacious little shit, and I was like, I am going to make this go. I'm going to make this work.
And was he there? Was the MD on the cruise as well?
He wasn't on the cruise. No,
he wasn't on the cruise. He prepped it and then sent you all out.
He prepped us and sent it all out. There's a different MD on the cruise who thankfully was a bit nicer.
Oh, good.
And the keys player, shout out to Tim. He just helped me. He was like, This is how to play a walking bass line. And I was so check this out. I was like in like foreign countries, non-English speaking foreign countries. And I was like going to music shops and I can remember buying like an Italian book in a music store that was about walking bass. And I knew that because it had an upright bass on the front cover and it said sort of like walking bassa or something like that on the front cover. And I was like, I'm going to have to buy this. And I can remember like getting this book and trying to figure out. So not being able to read any of the actual words and then trying to figure out how to play walking bass lines. And then also how to like buying like Ray Brown records when he was playing with and Nat King Cole records and trying to figure out how to play walking bass lines. And I did figure it out. It was an interesting experience to go through that with like the stakes being like super high. The stakes are if you do not get your shit together. And I think that I had, because the MD was definitely in contact with the guy that sent us out. They were definitely looking for other bass players. So I don't know how many weeks it was, but I guess it was like 2 to 4 weeks to get my shit together, and I knew it. So I was like desperately trying to get my shit together and did. And then ultimately I was on that cruise ship for when we went out, it was for 6 months, but it got extended. I ended up being on the cruise ship for 7 months, and I had 2 nights off in 7 months, and we played 5 sets a night.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was incredible. And that's where I learned to play bass. And actually I got off that cruise and I was pretty good. It can be done.
Scott's new course on Scott's bass lessons. We're going on tour on a boat.
Yeah.
Scott must shout at you.
The masterclass is just you screaming at people on Skype.
Yeah. And I actually, even going through that experience, I am actually into the tough love. I think that it depends who you are as a person. It worked for me. Like I actually need sometimes like that pressure to just somebody to freaking really lean into me and just be like, you fucking need to do this.
Yeah.
So for me, it actually worked.
It's weird because that doesn't work for me. That I've never. I think I don't. It's because I don't
recoil from it.
I don't respond well to. I think I've got like I've got a healthy problem with authority. I think.
Yeah.
And it's like if someone hires me in to do something, it's like it's very much you've hired me to do this. This is what you want. I will do that. You've paid for a service. Almost like a tradesman. It's like, if I had a plumber to fix this, if I had a bass player to play this, I'll show up and play this for you. But what I struggle quite a lot with people who aren't necessarily in the position of authority, or it's a bit of a grey area, and they're leaning into you like a lot. And then that in that scenario, like the tough love thing doesn't work for me, because I think my brain goes into like well, who are you? Like, why are you doing this to me? Like, you're just the drummer on the gig. You're not the MD. Why are you?
Yeah.
If I want to be told what to do, I'll ask him what he wants me to do, not you. Like,
it's an
also,
interesting.
I gave you a lift to the gig.
Yeah, he said, "Yeah, I give you a lift to the gig, and I freaking bought you a Ginsters. What you on about?"
Exactly. I went to the Cornish pasty place, spent 19 quid.
But there's like an interesting. The tension for me is like I would say I am actually not great with authority either, and I think that's actually why I did so badly in school, amongst other things. But I've got this sort of like with the tough love thing for me, it has to be in a way that puts them in a position where they don't think I can do it. It's that kind of tough love. Yeah. Because then I'm like, fuck you, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Prove you wrong.
That's the kind of tough love that works for me.
This is the I was going to call you autistic then. I didn't mean to do that. I am.
Anyway,
it's a spectrum. I'm a firm believer. Yeah. Everyone's got a bit of it in them anyway. But that is the I forgot the name of it. I'm really sorry. There's a thing to do with like ADHD and all these kind of things where it's the authority thing, but also it's the if you tell me I can't do it, I will move mountains out of spite.
It's like that's not what I want to hear, but it's exactly what I need.
Exactly. It's like I once depped a gig where I got the gig set list in the morning, and the gig was the same evening, and I learnt 32 songs in one day, like just rapidly charting them. Luckily, they weren't super hard. It was like a Kerrang pop punk night gig thing at this club in Chester. Yeah. But I had to learn, I think it was about 32, like, Good Charlotte, The Offspring, Green Day, a couple of Rage Against the Machine songs.
Awesome.
But it was a great gig, but it was like my brain, and this will be the same as for you with the charting and learning the show. It's like our brains go, I cannot do anything else other than this task right now, because if I stop or there's a hesitation or I get distracted by anything else, I will fail the task. There is no room. I have to learn 32 songs in 6 hours and then get in a car, drive an hour and a half and play a gig. And if I stop even to make a cup of tea, like I won't have enough time. It's like the pressure is on so much. You'll have the same thing, Johnny. Yeah.
I have a thing where like, if I've got something I need to do, there'll be the slightest thing that comes up, and I'm like, "Ooh, I'll go and do that instead," because I don't want to do the thing, And for a long time, practicing was like that for me, because I used to be. I've gotten a lot better with this over the years. Obviously, like I used to be put off by practicing because it would make myself admit that I'm not very good.
And because you're doing something hard and that's not fun.
And overcoming that barrier is massively. So, Scott, I want to ask you.
Go on. I was just going to say, I shot an Instagram reel instead of practicing the other day, and the Instagram reel was about how bad I am at practicing. I even said in the reel, I'm so bad at practicing. I'm shooting this video instead of practicing because I don't want to practice.
You've got to, you got to find a way of framing it differently so it seems like it doesn't feel like homework. That's the key to it, isn't it?
I agree. Yeah,
you've got to, like, Ian's got like a good sort of like sense about how to frame it for himself. He's like, he actually views it as like I can't remember what it's like time for himself, actually, like self. What's the word he uses? I can't remember it, but it's basically self-care for him. He likes to actually sit down and sort of like experiment with sounds and stuff like that. And I think that it's a great way to look at it. And having those conversations with Ian is actually really, not that I've ever actually, I'm the opposite, actually. I'm like a freaking dog with a bone with practicing. But it's, I don't know. I think that I could still, it felt like I was going to the gym and sort of like, with my practice.
Yeah,
I needed to sort of like mellow it out a little bit and just sort of like, hey, you can enjoy this. Yeah, it doesn't need to be like training for a freaking marathon every day.
So you were like just brunt force.
Dude, maniac.
I will do this one specific exercise for 70 minutes straight.
But then you were forced into that because it's like, right, you got 2 weeks to learn all this stuff.
Yeah. When you think about it, your sort of bass playing career, I mean, maybe you had the same mindset when you play guitar, but from day one, your mindset as a bass player has had to be, you will cram this. Like, It's not like when you got the cruise ship gig. It was like, right, no worries, you got this. The cruise starts in January. It's April now. You got all this time, and you can just leisurely stroll through the material. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like for me. Like I get wedding gigs like with 3 days notice, and then they give me the set list, and I'm like, how is this full of stuff I've never played before? Like, how is your set list full of songs that I don't know on a wedding gig? And I'm like, right, 18 fucking whatever songs to play, 18 Oasis songs no one's heard of, and I would know, like that kind of thing, or a Michael Jackson song, I swear no one knows, or Ariana Grande and all that sort of stuff. But you don't have a choice. You just got to cram it through, haven't you? Sometimes, just gotta,
I think you do. Like, I think that mine came from more of like a unhealthy. So, like, if you know anything about like autism or anything like that, do you know what special interests are?
Oh, I'm very. Oh, trust me, mate. I'm very familiar with all this.
Okay, right. So, like, that was my special interest. Like, so for anybody that doesn't know, like, if you've got autism, you like people get with if they've got autism, they can have like special interests. So, my son, for instance, he's sort of like he'll go through sort of like different stages. But god damn, when he's obsessed about something, it is to say it's like a compulsion is maybe like understating.
Oh, it's all in. It's every I've been there. Like it's every
crazy,
fiber of your being is only interested in, like Johnny. We're talking like you'll forget that you have to have something to eat. Like you'll forget to eat. You'll go, I haven't had a shower because I've just been looking at this one thing on the internet for the entire day. Like it's all in. It's all in.
I work for a college in the marketing team, and we had a learner in who was exactly what you're saying now, but his passion was graphic design. And he told me this whole story about, he school, no way, like didn't work. Only until he got to college and started and found that special interest was he then like, light bulb moment, this is it.
Because you basically it becomes like it can become like a compulsion, so like I've got it, my son's got it, my daughter's got it as well, and for me, like for a long time it was practicing, and it was a compulsion, and it was crazy. Like there was a part of my life where I decided, this sounds bananas right now, maybe if online was a thing it would have been easier. I could have been like, oh, this might be unhealthy, because there would have been more information available, right? But at the time, it felt totally sane. And I basically decided to swap my life around and practice all night and sleep all day. And my reasoning around this is that I was sick of getting like basically bothered by people interrupted in the daytime, taken away from practice. So I was just going to practice all night. So I did that. I practiced all night for hours, all night, and I slept all day, and I basically turned myself into a complete social disaster. And I remember going to a pub get together with my girlfriend at the time, and I've been doing this for like a few, too long. Put it that way, I've been doing it for too long. And going to this sort of like pub get together and almost having some sort of like weird panic attack in the pub, because I'd just been isolated for so long practicing this thing. So I'm not like that at all now. But yeah, so I think that viewing practice as self-care is much more, it's kinder, it's more fun. And god damn, it's a good job I wasn't a serial killer, because if I was a serial killer, I would have been freaking. It would have been bad. It would have been bad. Yeah, it would have been bad.
Yorkshire Ripper. I was going to say they never caught the Yorkshire Ripper, did they? Oh, they did. Yeah, no, I can't
he's here in the room.
Yeah,
my god.
That reminds me.
I have actually got I've got a theory that.
Go on.
I've got a theory that
Jack the Ripper just had autism and he was just really into like internal organs.
Like my brother's the same, and I can remember sort of like my dad joking, saying like he's either going to do something incredible, but if he goes into crime, we're screwed, because he's going to be like a man, because he just had this sort of like, same as me, like this sort of like bananas focus that is really useful, can be really useful, but also can be incredibly unhealthy sometimes, because it
Yeah,
doesn't
totally.
come from a place of I'm going to really work. It actually comes from a place of sort of like OCD compulsion type stuff.
Yeah. I that was me as a kid. Like, couldn't get me to do anything as a little kid in school and all that sort of stuff. I didn't want to do it. You couldn't make me.
Yeah.
And then I discovered guitar at like the age of 13. And then it was not quite the same as you, but it was like I would get up an hour earlier than I need to, and I'd play guitar in the morning. Then I'd get ready for school, go to school during like the the morning bit before the lessons start, the lunch break, and like an hour after school. My form teacher was the head of music. So I would, when she came into school, I'd be there at the front door of the music department. She'd let me in. I'd bring my Epiphone Les Paul, which is still
nice,
into little solid state Marshall MG, and I'd play it for another hour before everyone came in. I'd then, during reception, where they take the register and all that, headphones came on, played for another 20 minutes. Yeah. Then did all my classes, paid no attention to any of it really, except music. All lunch break, after school, go home, play again till mum and dad come in and be like, you need to go to bed, it's like 10 o'clock or whatever. And I just did that. I just did that until,
it's so cool, isn't it?
It's still so can't cool,
play.
Yeah, still rubbish. But like it was so funny as well, because it's like what I was learning was like the first band I ever liked was Metallica. So it's like we're talking like, and I don't know it anymore, but for a long time I knew their entire discography, like all of
Incredible.
it, all the guitar parts, all the live albums. Like I would just sit at home and go, which album am I going to do tonight? Like if YouTube was big then, and I had like a sense on me, I could have just done a cover of every Metallica tune. And I think would have had a pretty big channel by now. But
I think that it's like with YouTube and stuff. I worry about music and YouTube and Instagram, the algorithms, because I think that what you did, I think it's actually an incredible experience to go through that, because that's what I did. I was just sort of like loving on music and just, and there was less to do. There was just less,
Facebook didn't exist at this point. Like, I'm 30, so Facebook hadn't shown up really.
Couldn't spend an evening doing this.
So you can watch TV. You can watch TV. You can go to Blockbuster and get a video or like a DVD or whatever it is. You can listen to music, or you can play computer games, and that's basically it.
And that was. And not really any of it's online. The streaming hasn't shown up yet. Like I used to, like I would borrow my uncle's CDs, like, and my guitar teacher would give me a CD. Like he'd be like, we're doing The Extremist by Joe Satriani, but like that's what we're doing next week. So
I went to see that tour in Newcastle. Freaking! I met Joe Satriani. I didn't say one word. I think I just squeaked.
I would be exactly the same. But we do that. There's no. You can't go on Spotify and look at it. Like, there's less things to distract you, isn't it? It's like even
less stuff,
Even video games. It's like the video games back when I was a teenager. Online multiplayer hadn't really taken off yet. Like it's like if you did, it was only like it would be like LAN online games where there'd only be like 8 players and you all have to be connected. It wasn't. Xbox Live hadn't even shown up when I was like 13, 14. So all I could do, apart from
it's like a metaphor
I'm not going to talk about. Yeah, literally, you could just play guitar all day.
It's like a metaphor. There was only story mode. You could just do your story, and that was it, and not any of the online stuff.
Yeah. And I think that what worries me now is like, especially for sort of like kids, going through childhood and then into the teens and stuff like that. And then even for sort of like adults as well, is that the algorithms. So, I think two things. I think that the like YouTube, social media as well is like incredibly addictive. So I think that it has like, there's like lots of upside. I think that the world's connected like properly for the first time. I think that's really great. So I'm not sort of like a big doom and gloom person about the internet, but I think that, there's a lot of distractions. So you're never really, there's always something to sort of like grab your time now. Whereas like before you sort of like, there was less. So it was, potentially for me at least, I don't think I would have there was definitely a reality. If I'd had all of that stuff around me, I would have just been too distracted and just spent scrolling or whatever on social media, right? Yeah. And then the other thing is that I think that the algorithms don't, because of the way that the platforms are set up right now, which is ad-based platforms, right? So Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, they're all ad-based platforms. So their primary goal is to keep you on the platform as long as possible to sell as much advertising for their inventory as possible, right? To create as much ad inventory as possible. So because of that, music isn't like the thing that the algorithms favor, and instead it will favor like whatever sensationalist stories, whatever in the news cycle. And I'll give you an example, right? So I can go, let's say I'm into Joe Satriani, right? Let's say we were talking about The Extremist. I'm like, oh, I love Joe Satriani and Extremist. Today, if I went online on YouTube and I looked at a bunch of Joe Satriani videos, tomorrow, Joe Satriani is going to be in my feed, right? But there'll be a sprinkling of him. If I today went deep into the news cycle and was like, oh, I'm just going to look at the Ukraine-Russia war. Where are we on that? I'm going to go on to all of these different news channels of people fucking arguing like cats and dogs about, is it right? Is it wrong? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
When I go onto my newsfeed to YouTube tomorrow, it is going to be full of that. It's going to be a blitzkrieg full of all of the news cycle. And the reason is because the algorithms favor that content because it's stickier and more addictive, and it's going to keep you on. Yeah. So,
and it's more provoking in terms of comments, conversations.
Exactly. Again, right.
Keeping people on the apps. Yeah.
So without knowing it, what the platforms are actually doing is deprioritizing music, which I think is shit. Actually,
with music and its art in general. But you saw right. It's like my girlfriend's parents stayed over to dog sit a couple of weeks ago, and they would have opened up YouTube, which is on her TV, which is logged in on my YouTube account. And they obviously wanted to catch up on some news things, and they watch like GB News and things like that. I don't really like that news channel. We don't have to get into it, but I'm not a fan. I do not consume the content anyway. But for when I came back and I went into YouTube, my entire newsfeed of YouTube videos, just from one evening of someone consuming that, had completely changed. To the point where all the bass stuff was gone, all the other stuff I watched on YouTube, all the other people, it wasn't recommending that. It was constant, those kind of topics at that.
Those kind of topics, exactly.
And
so
I had to go through
the weighting isn't the same. Yeah. It's basically the weighting. The algorithm doesn't treat it the same. It's not like, oh, they've looked at Joe Satriani today, we're going to fill the feed tomorrow full of Joe. It's not that.
Which is bonkers because
it's bananas.
That's what you want, and that's what would keep you there.
Exactly right. So, and I watched somebody recently talking about not this specific thing, but this has been going around in my mind for a while. But I'm a big fan of Rob Harris, the guitar player from Jamiroquai, and I was listening to a video that he did. Either not Rolf Harris, Rob Harris.
SBL CEO in hot water after
mentions Rolf Harris. So
algorithm's going to squash us now. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cheers for that.
So I'm watching Rob Harris from Jamiroquai. Rob Harris. He's got a great YouTube channel, and he mentioned he does these cool updates, and he mentioned. So with all of this in mind, he kind of like, it was a throwaway comment. It was maybe like a sentence or two sentences, but I'll paraphrase. He said something like this. She's like, I've just been watching so many videos about like what's going on in the world today, like politics and da 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 da. And in my mind, I was like, it's happening to fucking everybody. You rewind 15 years ago, do you think Rob Harris was buying The Guardian and The Independent and freaking reading through all of that shit every day? Of course he wasn't, right? No. He was probably waking up and he was listening to music. He loves music, but again, the algorithms on these platforms and not waiting. The waiting between what's sensationalist and in the news and what and music are weighted completely different. So what happens is we're force fed whatever bullshit news the algorithms want us to consume over what we actually want to enjoy. And so it's like you're in sort of like, you have to be so mindful of like not going and looking at any of that stuff. Like somebody said the other day, they said something that I felt like guilty of not knowing, but I actually actively try and now keep away from the news cycle, because it's not that I'm not interested in the news. They said, the US have just the Ukraine have shot the first US missiles at Russia. And my initial thought was, Biden, you complete tosspot. And then, side note, and then I was like, I should know, that's really important. And I felt guilty for not knowing it, because I'm like trying not to look at it, because as soon as you look at it, that's all you see. It's all you see. Yeah. And I would love to be able to dip in and have I want to keep up to date. I think it is important, but the algorithms will literally just slam the living daylights out of your feed if you do that. So yeah, rock and a hard place, I guess, right now.
Yeah,
sorry.
Absolutely. So in order for SBL to rocket to the top of that, that's the type of content you guys need to start pumping out, I think.
Yeah, exactly. We need to get on Valuetainment or something like that and start talking about politics and the American news cycle. Jesus.
It's interesting you say that, because it's like, how do you navigate this style of, how do I word this?
Valuetainment is a great
term. It's valuetainment or edutainment. But it's like, how do you navigate that through like the social media content that you create at SBL? Because it's like, what you already do is, you've got things where it's like, if you want to increase watch time, you do like 5 reasons why you should do this. Because if someone listens to reason 1, they'll probably listen to reason 5, and then you've got them through more of the video. That means it's kicked out to the algorithm a little bit more.
They're more likely to click on the video as well.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you? Because you're aware of that, so that must be, those methods must be trickling down into sort of the SBL content and YouTube and stuff like that. Because I've seen the way your, not necessarily your content, but the company's content has changed, especially on social media. Because I've been aware of SBL for, I don't know, I won a year's membership to SBL when I was 22.
There you go.
I won a bass face competition.
Oh my God!
It was like the best.
Show us now.
Oh no! We'll get demonetized. But I won that, and I got a year's membership. But I'm thinking back then, the Instagram content. This will be 8 years ago now. Was photos, things like that, the occasional small video. Whereas now, though, you've got you and Ian and Sharon and all that sort of stuff. You've got to create incredibly focused short form video content that almost like the art part of it is almost completely irrelevant. It's like, you've got to have things where it's like, look at this, look, everyone look at this, look, shiny, stop scrolling. And it's like, how do you navigate that balance, attempting to balance, because I think very few people are able to balance it, the sort of passion and art around music and education, but also, I need you to click on the video and I need you to like it. I need you to share it.
Yeah,
I need you to go on my website and buy a subscription. It's my job.
Yeah, it's different for different channels. But what I will say is, it's like just like user behavior and algorithm behavior has changed massively. More algorithm behavior than user behavior, actually. But algorithm behavior has changed massively over the last sort of like decade plus, because the platforms themselves have got more sophisticated in understanding how to keep more people on their platforms. They got more sophisticated. And what that means is that it's turned the YouTube game somewhat into the way that I think about it is, your YouTube thumbnails are, each YouTube thumbnail is like, if you're driving along a motorway or road, they're like the billboards, right? They're the thumbnails, right? And if people aren't clicking on your thumbnail, based on the thumbnail and the title. If you're driving along that road and people aren't actually actively engaging in your thumbnail and your title, YouTube will tank it. They just won't share it out. Yep. So the algorithm the reason why there's so many titles like 5 Reasons To, 8 Ways You Can, like The Genius of Pino Palladino.
You'll never believe.
7 iconic example. The reason that has happened is because YouTube have prioritized click-through rate on their thumbnails and on the video, the click-through, how many people actually click through. So that puts creators in a place where if they don't play the game, if they don't have a great thumbnail and a great title, YouTube will actively not share out that video.
Yeah.
So it's really frustrating.
I've seen videos where it's not like the video itself isn't that good, but like it's the thumbnail and the title,
but it's getting massive click through. Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen it with SBL. Like I've seen because the videos that you shoot that really jump out to me are like the long form ones. Like I remember a while ago, you did that long form one in person with Guy Pratt. That was amazing. And
so interviews are doing really well, actually.
Yeah.
So interviews are doing really well.
Ian sat down with, I forgot his name, the original Incubus bassist.
Dirk Lance, that's the one right now. That's like the cheat code for creating sensationalist looking thumbnails. Because what the YouTube algorithm is really doing is pushing everybody really to create sensationalist thumbnails, like a tabloid newspaper front, the headline. That's what they've done against the algorithm, right? So, but the cheat code for that is long form content with like interviews, because the 2 main things that the YouTube algorithm really cares most about is click-through rate and then watch time. And with a long form interview, you're going to have a long watch time. And let's take somebody else's channel, for example.
Rick Beato.
Rick Beato. Okay,
Yay!
So Rick. So if you look 2 years ago, Rick would have done lots of the 20 best guitar intros of all time. Or I listened to the top 10 Spotify. And he still does a few of them things, but they've been drastically reduced. And what he's actually done is really lean really hard into long form interview content, because that's the cheat code. Yeah. It's the cheat code of YouTube growth and having to. You don't have to have sensationalist thumbnails to make people click through. You can put the Sting interview, or like in our case, the Henrik Linder interview, or the Guy Pratt interview. You can I cannot tell you how fucking awesome it is to sit down in a content meeting, because like when we sit down in content meetings, we're like, here's the video, here's the lesson, here's what it is. And then we have to brainstorm, what's the title going to be? What's the thumbnail going to be, right? And we've got Jack on board. Jack's going to create 3 thumbnails. They're all going to be A/B tested against each other. We're going to have 3 different titles. We're going to, like, for each thumbnail and title, we're maybe talking about that for like 30 minutes, and Jack will spend sort of like a couple of hours designing different thumbnails. There's a shit ton of work going into doing that. Versus
just to get them to click the video,
just to get them to click, versus a long form interview. It's you're like, oh, what should we call this? We all laugh jovially. Let's call it the so-and-so interview. Done. Right? So that's going to be the title, and then the thumbnail is just going to be them.
Chris, I've just found the title of this video, by the way.
Yeah.
We joke, but if we just called it the Scott Devine interview, it would do just fine.
Exactly.
And also, I think the good thing about that is, also I've seen those thumbnails. Like I remember there's been things where I've seen it pop up on my YouTube feed and gone, oh, that's cool. I don't have time to watch it right now, but I will get around to it. And then obviously you forget. And then 2 days later, I'm back on YouTube, and it comes up again on my feed. And you do a little weird deja vu, because you go, I've seen this video. Yeah. Well, I saw this video was presented to me.
Do you know
Why
Instagram
is the
does
title
that?
different now?
Instagram does that now
with
as well.
carousels.
You ever find the second one shows first?
Yeah, the second one shows up. But the cool thing I like about those long form interviews, like what ones you've done and Rick Beato and stuff like that, is you get people on board with them because it's like the amount of value in the video itself. There's just so much value, and it's like you can take a gamble with like, because you can take a gamble with like, you did a System of a Down one a while ago. It's like Sharon talking about 5 System of a Down bass lines or something like that, and I like System of a Down. I'm not necessarily going to click on that video because like I know all the System of a Down bass lines you're going to talk about. Like I clicked on the video and I guessed what they were going to be before they showed up. That's fine. The band's only got so many songs and so many iconic bass parts. Of course you're going to talk about Sugar and stuff like that. But something like the long form interview with Guy Pratt or Rick Beato's like Tony Levin interview, it's like I've got no idea what they're going to talk about, and you don't need to sell that video to me. I'm gonna watch it. Like,
exactly. I will say this. So what YouTube, when it actually comes to user behavior, the thing that users are sensitive to is format of video. So, for instance, I've done an interview with Victor Wooten before and it bombed.
Oh, really?
And bombed. The reason it bombed is because he's not holding the bass in it, and we're talking about his life actually. And I think that some people care about Victor Wooten's life, but most people actually want to see him play. So if he'd been sat with the bass and I'd got him to play through that video, it would have had like 10 times the amount of views. Wow. Yeah. So that's why our interviews specifically, like the Dirk Lance one, wasn't as sort of like I wasn't as militant about the structure of that.
He's still working through Ian wants him to play specific songs, and
the idea is exactly the idea is, so the Marcus Miller one that we did is a good example of this. Henry Kalinda is, I'm going into that interview and I've got like 5 or 6 tracks, and basically I want them to break them down. I'm going to ask him about that's really what it is. We did the same thing with Michael, so we've had a massive win with that particular format.
But it's genuinely valuable though. It's genuinely I'm a big Guy Pratt fan, so like to sit and watch him talk about Like a Prayer and all that sort of stuff with the bass in his hand and actually go, this is the part, this is why I did this, and actually to get the tone I do this. And then because there's a bit about the octave pedal where Ian is like, oh no, I go on the net pickup, and Guy's like, no, you go on the bridge pickup, and this is why. It's like that's genuine. I perceive that to be genuinely valuable information. You know, you don't have to clickbait me into. You don't have to clickbait me into watching that. Like that's actually like I want to know these things. You don't have to kind of like. You don't have to sell it to me. I'm already there.
Yeah.
When Ian came on, he was saying, we often would get guests to bring a tone along for a section, and they would, talk about it. And Ian played live, and he was talking about it was a Dessa track and so heavy with effects, and that's kind of Ian's thing. And talking about that, and breaking that down, gave me and you insight into that. So there's just value everywhere. Yeah, I think that we should, to test this thumbnail theory, I'm going to get my bass.
So I get my bass as well. Do this.
My basses are downstairs. Oh god. No, sorry guys, I got nothing.
Go on, Chris, mate. Just put your bass face.
Yeah. and then it'll be like, oh, Scott teaches me bass. Perfect.
I can go get. I can actually no. Everything's downstairs in hard cases. I can't help.
I thought you're gonna get the ukulele.
That's downstairs.
The
bass uke's downstairs.
There we go. Well, Scott, thank you so much. We're talking about wisdom, and there's been so much of it in here through the stories you've told, and even our roundabout content or on the end. It's been fantastic.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Well, you're not out the woods yet. We like to finish our main episode with some quick fire questions. Okay,
I'm ready.
So these are going to be one-word answers. No thinking, top of the dome, all that kind of stuff.
One-word answers?
Well,
just answer the question.
Answer it.
There's no room to elaborate. We will allow you to elaborate on the last one.
Okay.
But you'll see why when you get to it.
Yes. Okay. Chris, would you like to start?
It's me to
the interrogation of Scott Devine.
Absolutely. What's your sort code? Anyway. So mother's maiden name. Question 1.
Atkinson.
Yeah, you're supposed to answer it. But while we're here, question 1: pick or fingers?
Fingers.
Very well.
Nice. Question 2. Active or passive?
Passive.
Question 3. Rounds or flats?
Flats.
Nice. Question 4. 4-string or 5?
4.
Ooh. It's question 5, right? Yeah. Question 5. In-ear monitors or wedges?
Wedges.
Wedges.
Number 6. P or poo? No, P or J?
J.
Ooh.
I know, weird because
Yeah,
I was,
it's
yeah,
a P
right,
as
there's a
well.
whole story. Yeah.
Music Man Bongo, actually.
Not a fucking Music Man Bongo, the ugliest bass
Musical
ever made.
toilet
God
seat.
damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus.
Can't trust a man with a bongo.
I never trust it. If they're playing a bongo, have either of you got a bongo?
No.
God damn. Like, what are people thinking when they get a bongo? Are they freaking blind?
Now that's
Like,
a P or
it's-
poo, right?
That's a poo, yeah. Jesus. Anyway, carry on.
Number 7. What is your desert island bass?
A really nice playing jazz style bass.
Excellent.
Very well.
Number 8. What do you think is the best bass effect?
Octave.
Ooh. Okay.
I will fist fight anybody that thinks anything. Octave! If anybody says envelope filter, I'll give you a slap with a wet fish. It's fucking the octave.
Number 9. Unpopular bass opinion or like a hot take. So to give a really quick example.
I was about to say, people that play short scale basses are lame. No.
He's answered.
Right,
I
you two
said
fight.
I said that on we did a YouTube video.
I know.
On YouTube. Oh my word, I was crucified on it. Anyway,
I'm in the market for one, actually.
so I do like short scale basses. So unpopular opinion.
You can be like, I mean, that one's a good example. Like short scales are rubbish, but like Johnny, just to throw him in the hot water here. Johnny in the past has said like octave pedals are overrated. You know, that kind of thing.
Coming from the guy who just plays Nirvana and Foo Fighters covers all day.
I'm going to play My Hero with my vintage LC2 now.
Unpopular.
Like a hot take.
Hot take.
Like a hill you're willing to die on, that kind of thing.
Small bass cabs are absolute bullshit. I'm not saying that
15. It's really good.
Dude, Chris, I've got a 1x15, but there's no getting away from the fact that a 4x10 kills, or an 8x10
kills my
right?
back.
It kills my back as well. But like, I was brought up in this. Just give me 2 minutes. I was brought up in the era of freaking small bass cabs. As I began to play bass, Bassist magazine, Bass Player magazine was full of these tiny bass cabs. It was like the era of Nokia. Can you remember when Nokia's just got smaller and smaller and smaller and like, you know, and just to the point where you needed like a pin to actually operate them. Well, bass cabs went through a similar life cycle. Right. They just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And in fact, my dog, Oscar, God rest his soul, died a few years ago. Oscar was actually on a full-page ad in Bassist magazine next to a euphonic audio cab to show how small the euphonic audio. I was in Monte Carlo on that cruise ship, and I randomly opened a French bass magazine. And my dog was in the. I was like, "What the hell's going on?" My dog was next to this cat. I was like tripping. Yeah, I was like, "Oh man,
he's standing for something I hate."
Yeah, well, but here's the deal, Johnny. Right, I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I was like, because marketing works. I was like, yeah, small cabs are awesome. So I've got all of the small cabs and stuff like that.
I bet you've got all the ones where it's like it collapses from a 115, but then you can modular.
Oh my god, that's bullshit sort of propaganda that they spread back in the day, right? Anyway, so I'm sort of like singing all of this small cab shit from the tops of all of the hills. I'm like a massive that's my vibe, right? Anyway,
you know
and
what?
then,
I'll agree with you because I have to take I've got one of the Ashdown Route Masters, and they very nicely sent me the 1x15 cab.
yeah.
And I just have to take that for weddings because I'm often, or little covers gigs and stuff because I'm often I'm shoved in the corner. I've got to
they're
tuck it
great for like
it underneath the
traveling.
keyboard player, that kind of thing. It's got to come
But they didn't sell it that way. The way they sold it is that they are better, not more practical. They said they were better. They said they were equal. They said they're small.
It's basically an
and
810.
as good as good. And then I went on a gig. It was out in Dubai. I turned up to that gig, and there's an SWR and a big 8x10. And I looked at the stage. I was like, for God's sake. Oh my God.
Which boomer hired this in?
Which freaking boomer got that bloody thing? And I was in sound check, and I played one note, and I was like,
yeah,
they lied. They lied. It was propaganda. The bigger the cab, the bigger the head, the better the end.
More is more. You were like, do you know what? Instead of this
More
one
is
small
more.
cab, I should have 8 of these small cabs.
Size doesn't matter. Bullshit.
I've had the exact same thing. I got hired ages ago to do one of those big naughties weekenders at Butlins.
Yeah.
And they'd hired in an 810. Was it an SVT? I think it was an 810 SVT. And all the gigs I'd done that year had been in-ear monitors with my quad cortex, just in-ear mix, can't really hear the low end, so be it. There's no bass on stage. There's no guitars on stage. It's just the drum kit. And they'd hired in proper backline, like guitar heads and stuff and cabs. And we got literally 5 minutes into sound check, and they're like, I'm never going back. I'm genuine. I had this 810 immediately behind me. Every time I'm playing, oh, by the way, this was a busted tribute band, I'd like to clarify. A busted tribute band. And I'm like, I am a golden god. Just the raw power behind me. And the stage was so big, the front of house engineer was for doing monitors and stuff. He was like, you can turn that up louder if you want. It's nowhere near the vocal mics. I'm nowhere near anyone. It's massive. And I've got in-ears in. So I'm like, how do you distort an SVT? Turns out you can't.
Let's go.
I'm like, the room's shaking.
There's nothing like that. Because actually, when people say, it's about moving air, until you've actually experienced moving air. Yeah. It's I can remember just playing and it just going, and feeling the air moving. I was like, that's what it is.
People care so much about their mix in the wedge, and it's if I can hear myself there, that's fine. No, I want 3D sound. I want to hear it from both.
Because ultimately, it makes you a better bass player. That's actually you enjoy the gig more, of course, but it makes you a better bass player. At least for me, because I play less. I just play less.
Yeah, you do because you realise every time I play. Everything moves
you actually hear
so much power in the space.
Your experience is more like the people listen through the PA to it. Where when you listen to a great band and the bass player is barely playing anything, but it sounds great, and you're like, oh, this is great. It hopefully that's what if you're playing through a big rig, that's your experience as well. So ghost notes feel aren't like a sound, they're like a feel, because you can feel the air moving, you play in the pocket differently. You start thinking
about the kick drum. I think you think about the kick drum a lot more, because you go, well, when the kick drum hits, there's this massive fundamental low end that just
feels more like a
percussive
instrument.
It feels like a percussive instrument. So it's well, when can I really want to make sure when you hit that, I hit me, or when you're not, what am I doing? And you start to think more about, whereas when you just sort of DI into a small PA, it's almost like I could play. I've done things, I swear to God, I've jumped in last minute for wedding bands, or I've done gigs where I've rolled my volume off mid-song and kept playing. Just to be am I even coming through? And then I'll turn the volume back up, and I'm like, I hear no difference. There's literally, why am I here?
Yeah.
Sound checks, the sound guys must think, God, who's this bloody guy on bass? Because I will make mistakes on purpose in sound checks to make sure I can hear that and make sure that is wrong.
That's
so that
great,
I'm not just
actually.
blinded
Yeah.
I'm going to start.
And then you
hitting
can say to the rest of the
pause.
band, guys, I just played everything for that last chorus, like out of semitone, and
Yeah.
nobody knows.
Yeah. I'm going to start
really
hitting the
see if you-
transpose button on my quad cortex in the middle of sound checks and go, just gone down half a semitone and no one even noticed. We're going up. Here we go.
Yeah.
You'll notice in a minute.
Yeah. This is going to get really uncomfortable. Anyway, we've got one more question.
Yeah, that was a
One more
really
question.
nice quick fire. answer.
Yeah, a nice quick fire one. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. The last one is we spoke a little bit about our excitement for Star Wars before the call,
Oh yeah.
and this is a specific Star Wars question.
The most important question you have ever been asked in your professional career.
Oh, hit me.
Here we go.
What Star Wars character would be the best at bass?
Which Star Wars character was Thundercat in The Mandalorian?
No, because
That one.
fair.
Cheating.
Yeah, all right.
Awfully.
I'll say all Flea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah,
next?
'cause Flea
But
was
if they
Kenobi,
didn't
wasn't he?
exist, who would be there? It'd have to be Chewbacca.
Correct. The correct
enough.
answer.
It'd have to be Chewbacca.
Don't
Yeah.
He's
listen
holding
to
it down.
Yeah,
People
Johnny,
think
you
that
were
he's the
wrong. It's
people think
Chewbacca.
he's the co-pilot, but actually he's running the ship. You know,
Yeah.
that's the meaning behind it.
What answers have you? Who? What other
me and
answers?
Johnny,
have you had any
what-
sort of like bad ones on that last question?
Well, Johnny doesn't like mine, but I stand behind mine. No, we've had some good ones. Oh, who did Ian say?
What was yours?
Yeah,
We've had a few people say Han Solo, which is completely incorrect. Han Solo is absolutely a lead guitarist, no question.
No.
I thought that Luke Skywalker was on guitar. Han Solo keys.
Do you really think a guy with the ego of Han Solo would play keyboards?
Keytar.
Or he'd have like 3 or 4, like up and down, and he'd have some modular synth stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
I know what you mean,
said-
though.
so
I know what you mean.
Johnny said Boba Fett. Which is not bad.
I always think the bass player is the coolest person, and who is cooler than that? You know, like who is cooler
Chewie.
than that? Get out of here! Get out!
Chewie's cool. I said Jango Fett for the simple reason Jango Fett hired in to do a job. He does the job. He arguably nails it, creating the clone army.
Yeah.
But like any true bass player, at the end, he got a little bit too big for his britches, and Samuel L. Jackson cut his head off.
True. What did Ian say? Because Ian's a massive Star Wars nerd.
He was Mace Windu.
Mace Windu.
Yeah.
Mace Windu.
Only if
think-
the bass was purple and it said like "bad motherfucker" on the
Yeah,
underside of it.
Yeah.
I'm
But
still going with
we have to
Chewie.
say with different people, like some people aren't really into Star Wars, so we've done like our friend Jordan Landers. He's a big Lord of the Rings guy, so we talked about which Lord of the Rings character. He said Sean Bean's character, great bass player.
Oh god, that fight, that scene where Sean Bean gets taken out. I watched that with my kid like last year,
crying.
and I was like, "Is this cool?"
This is a formative moment.
He
for
was
you.
like 11, and I was like, "This is a little worse than I think." I remember.
Did you do the bit where like were you physically sweating when Aragorn kicked that helmet and broke his toe? Were you I can't. I've got to tell him. I've got to tell him what happened. Did you know that?
Pause his movie.
Pause his movie.
Yeah.
I've had loads of people talk about Back to the Future. I can't remember who that one was.
Whatever
though.
your pop
We've had
culture
loads.
thing is, basically.
Whichever pop culture character.
Yeah.
Chewbacca,
question,
good
though.
choice, I think.
I think it's a solid choice to end out the podcast. Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, my friend. Lovely to finally meet you in the flesh, and and we'll have to do this again sometime. Before
Absolutely.
we go anywhere, we need to do some admin, of course, right at the end of the podcast. In case you missed it, we are now on Patreon. You can sign up to our Patreon to go and get access to all of the bonus features that we are giving to the lovely people, including monthly gear giveaways, which will be the first one will be announced very soon, and of course bonus content that we're going to film in just a minute. So Scott's going to be answering some of your questions at home. So if you want access to that episode and any moving forward, make sure you head over to the link in the description and check out our Patreon. If you want to go and follow us on social medias, etc., you can do so on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing on there if you want to watch and see this episode in all of its glory. Or you can go and follow us on Instagram at In The Pocket Pod. Lastly, if you are listening on your chosen listening platform of choice, make sure you rate this episode 5 stars if you had a good time. I've say 5 stars. They might have changed it to 10, and I'm just getting people to like half.
Yeah, everyone's giving
however
us
many
like
stars
five.
do, just give us like max.
Max stars, please. Helps something to do with algorithms, like we spoke about. Reach more people, and that is how we keep growing. And you guys can show your lovely support. Little free ways that you can do that. So thank you so much to everyone that has done so far. Before I hand over to you guys, I am going to give a shout out to our tier 3 patrons, if that's okay with you.
In the Pocket Road Crew.
Yeah, the road crew are here. We were going to call them groupies, but we thought roadies is a bit better. So our tier 3 road crew are Alan, Alexander, Brett, Caleb, Chris, Emily, Ethan, Ferris, Jonas, Justin, Mark, Rob, and Joost Kroon. I chickened out of saying surnames then. Sorry, everyone.
Next time you can have surnames.
Yeah, you know who you are. Thank you so much, guys. Scott, what have you got going on in life, and where can people find you on the internet?
Scott'sBassLessons.com. You'll find me on YouTube and Instagram, and apparently we're on TikTok as well. But I don't have it, so I don't know.
Yeah, stay away
but
from
apparently
that
it's going on. Yeah. But that's where you'll find me.
Fantastic. And Chris, what about yourself, my friend?
You can find me quite literally everywhere under That Guy on Bass. Nice and simple. Johnny, where can the good people of the internet locate you?
I'm mainly operating over on YouTube and Instagram, just at Jonny Dibble. That's me, baby. Once again, everyone, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.